Hi, I'm Vanessa and I love bad Star Trek. I will model and wear for you the candy corn dentures that is season 1 of Star Trek's Next Generation. Today I will be talking to you about an episode called Home Soil, an episode that asks the question, what is life? But to answer that, we also have to ask, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. The writing and consequently the emotional arcs of the people in this episode are even more nonsensical than the science in this episode. Of course, that comes with a huge disclaimer. Because let's be honest, Star Trek and science are only very loosely related. Warp drive, to my knowledge, can't exist. Going faster than the speed of light would theoretically take so much energy that it's not likely to ever happen. Also, now that Discovery has made canon what we all suspected about the replicator fuel.
It's made of our shit, you know. That's the base material that we use in our replicators. We deconstruct it to the atomic level and then reform the atoms. It's pretty good for shit. And we don't have to commit atrocities for it.
I guess that's somewhere that psi and phi meet. The amount of scientific fudging along with the lack of emotional stakes makes this hard to get behind. Even with the very Star Trek theme of expanding the definition of life itself, there are plenty of other episodes that do that. Most notably, especially in the Next Generation, are episodes that center around data and ask this question, such as Measure of a Man in season 2 or The Offspring in season 3. The things that make those episodes so effective are noticeably absent here. There is investment in the action that's going on because there is an urgency and emotional consequences to both of those episodes, but Home Soil feels more like an X-Files episode, but there's not even the smokescreen of supernatural pretense or hidden malevolence to make it interesting. It's solved within the first 10 minutes, in fact, no matter how many baseless accusations Picard flings around. In fact, the ending actually makes the beginning incoherent in retrospect. This episode is exhibits I through P in making the case that season 1 of the Next Generation's writing demands that you don't think about it. The plot starts off with a captain's log mentioning the Enterprise is being asked to stop by a planet called Valera 3 because there's a Federation group of scientists and engineers who are terraforming the planet, and communications have been erratic and there's concern about their welfare. So it's pretty vague. After watching this, I thought, isn't there already a way they can terraform without all the hoopla, you know, the Genesis device or whatever, that missile that they can just shoot at a planet and make it go from gas giant to M-class in the span of a few Breaking Bad episodes? But that's when I remembered my amnesia when it comes to Trek is very specific to the movies, because the Genesis device doesn't actually work out that great. But I'm sure that Elon Musk, with his smarts and thousands of nukes, will definitely terraform Mars successfully and not just blow a huge hole on a planet for no reason that can't maintain a hold on an atmosphere because it has no magnetic poles. That obviously was a little bit of a tangent, but Picard spends a good amount of the first few minutes going, hello, anybody home? Hello? Take a hint, dude. It's like the guy on Tinder who forgets they message you and they try the exact same line like a whole ass year later.
No malfunctioning equipment on either side, sir. They are receiving us.
Maybe no one's home.
We are sensing life forms, sir.
As the chief set crankily says, dude, we're fine, we're tired and very busy. Troy keeps interrupting and interjects an opinion that there's something afoot. He's hiding something. He's getting tense. He's starting to panic. And this sort of jacks up Picard to pursue this line of questioning further. So this is where we get the start of the dissolution of anything resembling logical deductive reasoning.
If you'll excuse me, sir, I really must get back to work.
I sense deliberate concealment, sir.
Of what?
I don't know, but it's intense.
We would require no special attention.
I'm trying not to be rude, sir, but this is really very inconvenient.
He is concealing something. It's more than just being too busy.
She isn't a telepath. She's an empath, meaning she can't draw conclusions like that at all. She goes from, I think they're hiding something, to they are definitely hiding something within a couple seconds. And away team beams down to the planet. And here's where we get one of the first violent tonal shifts, because it started off as unwelcoming and cranky, even potentially dangerous for some reason, to a full tour from a dead in the eyes robotic woman.
What we're doing is so exciting, so inspiring. We take a lifeless planet and little by little transform it to an M-class environment capable of supporting life. The planet must also be without life or the prospect of life developing naturally.
Who, of course, Riker stares at during a strangely placed, gratuitous butt shot. I saw this documentary once of a North Korean museum, sort of remote, even by North Korean standards. And there's just this one woman that lives there and has one job: to give a tour on the off chance that anyone ever visits to the propaganda-filled tiny museum in a isolationist country. That's what this scene felt like. She even says,
We don't get many visitors. It's exciting to have you here.
but it sure sounds like you prepared this whole spiel well in advance. I'm on to you, ma'am.
But the water on this planet is subsurface and extremely high in salt content. We're just about to begin pumping and filtering the water. Next, we introduce microorganisms. And when the process is complete, we'll have a lush, arable biosphere.
Their belts honestly look like a strip of seaweed you put around a piece of sushi. Troy once again says that these folks are concealing something.
The other two are secretive, but she is as open as she appears.
And the chief engineer sends one of his underlings to the hydraulic room, kind of out of nowhere.
Shouldn't you be in the hydraulic chamber, Arthur?
Now?
Yes.
And that's when things go bad. There's a man alone in a room. Follow me here. There's a man alone in a room with a laser, the door's closed, and the man inside is screaming. So who knows what is going on in that room? And when the doors finally open, we discover that he just ripped a pipe way too hard. Just put on a nightlight, order him some pizza, or at least that's how the crew seems affected by this horrible tragedy. So they beam out the body along with some of the crew so they can go mourn. And that's about the last you ever hear of that guy. He completely ceases to matter, especially because Data's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go in the killer laser room by myself. Even though we totally don't know how this happened, and I'm gonna ask you to turn on the power. Let's let her rip. Yeah, that wasn't such a hot idea, it turns out, you know.
I am now running the base drilling program.
Geordi's like, what's going on in there? Like he's yelling at his teenage son that's taking a suspiciously long time in the bathroom. Throughout season 1, we get these disparate beats of drama where there should be comedy, and comedy where there should be an emotional weight. So when the engineer who's still down there finds out that Data destroyed the laser so that he didn't, die, it comes off as really goofy. He becomes so much more affected by the fact that the laser is broken than his coworker died.
What did you do to this laser drill? A year's work destroyed.
I had no choice.
His His coworker literally had smoke coming out of the top of his head from being shot by that very laser like a minute ago, dude. The laser needed to go. It had proven itself to be unsafe after the first guy got shot. Now Data got shot, or was being shot at, and he's still like, wah, my pew pew gun. Maybe there's some kind of relationship beyond engineer and thing that he built. Maybe he has a target tattooed somewhere fun to commemorate their relationship.
Nathaniel is in a committed relationship with a car that he's named Chase. He met Chase in a resale lot about 5 years ago.
Love you, baby.
Data says that the gun appeared to be guided by a mind, reacting and adapting to his attacks and evasions. And a few scenes later, we see that Geordi finds what they think is life down one of the mine shafts in the form of a distant twinkle.
Sandy texture. Those flashes are almost musical. I see color variations and rhythms and complex harmonies.
And right here, they could end the entire episode because they basically figured it out right there. The twinkling thing is alive and it's probably using the laser to defend itself. Seems rather open and shut to me. So not only do they not piece these things together to save us some time, they also make the fatal error, something that a scientist would probably never do. Because I'm no biologist, but I'm pretty sure that just grabbing a living thing you don't know anything about, except that it might have the wherewithal to hack a powerful laser and use it to kill a guy, you know, maybe removing it from that place and bringing it on the Enterprise is a really fucking stupid idea. The thing about terraforming, we find out, is that it can only take place on lifeless planets. And since they discover what looks like life, Lucy has some explaining to do. Remember Troy being like, hey, he's concealing something. That chief engineer, haircut, and chrome dome are also concealing something. We find out that they knew about the twinkling things, but they didn't know that they were alive, even when they started coordinating together to make geometric shapes in the sand.
Tell me about these patterns.
At first, we thought it was just natural phenomenon unique to Valara 3.
That's the thing they were hiding, that they saw the twinkle and they didn't tell anybody. So this specter of ill intent that they introduced in the beginning is completely not there. The tense moment where the chief randomly sends his engineer to the hydraulics room appeared, writing-wise, to have some kind of ill intent behind it. But there's no payoff for that because there's a complete denial of any knowledge that they were upsetting the landscape. The emotional focus was not so much on how the microbrain, as they call it, felt being shot at, so much as the crew processing the demise of their precious experiment.
Everything I've worked so hard for is falling apart.
Seeming to not be affected at all by the fact that their co-worker was just shot and killed by a laser beam. It's an odd choice for death to mean so little, but season 1 tends to have that as a theme. Also, Troy and Picard draw some rather drastic conclusions and spend a good deal of the episode accusing the crew on the planet of murder based on no evidence gathered from an investigation that never took place. This ought to be something that Troy and Picard should reflect on and not do anymore. And the way that the chief engineer answers these accusations is kind of funny. I honestly wonder if Wachowski wrote Jupiter Ascending after this, that like they were inspired by this scene.
That's what I have to find out. You're a man obsessed with what you do. Who knows what an obsessed man will do to keep going? Kill, perhaps?
I create life. I don't take it.
I create life! And I destroy it.
So the rest of the episode is basically just debating what we already know, which is whether the thing they found on the planet is alive or not, which it clearly is, but the criteria they give is kind of strange, at least at first, especially from Data.
Only life can replicate itself, Doctor. Inorganic or not, it is alive.
Of course, he would think that all the thing needs is reproduction to be considered living. It's not clear to me why this debate rages for as long as it does, other than to just generate more dialogue. There have been scads of non-corporeal aliens introduced in the original series and unconventional aliens that don't appear humanoid like tribbles, but the alien notably most like the microbrain is a sentient rock named the Horta. In fact, when the Horta is introduced in the episode called The Devil in the Dark, the episode follows a very similar formula to that of Home Soil, where a planet that's being mined for minerals is murdering the miners in self-defense. Spock mind melds with the Horta in order to communicate with it, where they find out that it's actually in pain and it needs help. And this is where we get one of my favorite "I'm a doctor" jokes from Bones.
I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
You're a healer. There's a patient. That's an order.
The microbrain on the Enterprise interfaces instead with the universal translator, where it ends up giving the best description of a human being that has ever been uttered.
Ugly, giant, bags of mostly water.
Bags of mostly water?
An accurate description of humans, sir.
No one's committed murder, and they all just leave. But the microbrain's like, yeah, come back in 300 years maybe. No explanation for why that long or short. The only feeling of stakes or a threat was the microbrain getting bigger, but all it did was take over the medical lab. So what? They basically just controlled that room, giving the distinct impression that they just basically wanted to be left alone. When the microbrain starts interacting with the computer and growing, Picard says something completely silly.
It is now a colony of single cells which organize as a computer. And like any computer,
more is stronger.
The bigger the computer, the better. Unless it takes up a whole room, forget it. The 80s. The microbrain declares war on humans, and honestly, they could destroy the Enterprise in fairly short order from what we're told. But they just mess with a few controls. But after Picard's like, hey, we didn't know you were down there, they change their mind pretty quickly because Riker turns down the light in sickbay, which hurts them because they're photosensitive. So they basically held them at gunpoint to make them stop. I guess this episode is meant to demonstrate how a lack of communication causes an escalation in conflict in rather short order. But as long as you go, hey, my bad, at some point, it's totally cool. No harm, no foul. You killed my whole family, but hey, you didn't know. All good now. See you in 300 years, I think. Like, subscribe, or whatever you want to do. No pressure. Prescriptive advice is not my gig. Till next time, I guess.